What is going on, everybody? It is time for another Friday the 13th review. Guys, this is our only Friday the 13th review of 2025. We only get one Friday the 13th this year. I am your host, Rob Coakley, joined as always by Jesse Wilkins.
Hello, sir.
And Dave Wilkins.
Hello.
And luckily, we might be reviewing the worst of the worst, but we'll leave that decision towards the end of the episode. I have seen this one quite a bit, and every time I watch it, I just feel like it's lacking. But before we start our actual review, Dave, can you hit us with a synopsis for this movie?
Friday the 13th, Part 7, The New Blood. 1988, directed by John Carl Buckler. That's how I'm going to pronounce that name. Buckler! Years after the strange drowning death of her father, Tina Shepard returns to the site of his demise, Crystal Lake. Her developing psychic powers were responsible for ending his life, leaving Tina riddled with guilt as an adult. While deceitful Dr. Cruz tries to manipulate her abilities for his own ends, both physician and patient are in for the shock of their life when Tina's powers unwittingly free camper killer Jason Voorhees from his watery slumber. So this is the 7th installment of the Friday the 13th series. Came out in 1988, but if you chronologically follow the timeline of this movie from the first movie to this 7th movie, it doesn't take place in 1988. It would actually take place in 2002, which would be pretty weird because people would have cell phones and they would certainly not be dressed like that. Yeah, the timeline got a little bit jumbled up since that first movie, but this is a weird movie. I don't think I agree with Rob that it is the worst of the series, but it is certainly not the best of the series.
I didn't say it was. I said it may be. I didn't give that final opinion yet.
Fair enough. But this movie was kind of hobbled by the MPAA there, and they made them cut pretty much every kill out of this movie. Every single kill is a cutaway scene, and it immediately annoyed me to the point where I had to Google it to see, like, all right, did they make them do this? And that's exactly what they did. And the director hated that they did that. So you kind of got to take with a grain of salt that the product of this movie wasn't what it was supposed to be. And it's really not fair to the movie. And unfortunately, I think that does hurt the overall product and will affect the score because, we're rating it on what it is, not what it should have been. So that is unfortunate. And I'm not going to really fault them for that because you can actually go on YouTube and watch all the kill scenes, and they are, they're pretty good kills. So
yeah, since this is how we're starting, I have some more information on all this. If we want to just do this at the beginning, do you want to take a guess at how many times they had to submit this movie just to get their R rating?
How many kills were there? That many times is my guess. 13 times.
9 times. So they would send it in and they would send it back and say they had to cut more. So 9 times.
Oh, I was actually closest. 14 kills in this movie. I just guessed 13.
They should have always done 13 kills.
I will say this. Actually, finish your point.
So that is, as you brought up, Dave, the first thing that really hobbled this movie. The second thing, this was not the planned intention of this movie. This was supposed to be the movie where Freddy Krueger shows up. That was what was written for this movie to start things off. And they couldn't strike a deal to get the characters in the same movie. So by the time they realized they weren't going to be able to do that, they basically had 5 months to write a new movie, cast it, shoot it, edit it, score it, and get it out. They had 5 months to do that. So that is another reason this movie was extremely hobbled.
How long would they have had? It's been a year since the last one. So I mean,
yeah, but you're working on these beforehand. 5 months for a movie, dude, it's
fast turnaround.
For writing, for starting from the writing phase to getting it out, 5 months is insane.
I'd be shocked if they spent more than 15 minutes writing any of these movies.
That's true. I do think it takes about 14 minutes to write a movie. I think
This one had the most complex plot, I think, of all of them.
I think they just open like a can of alphabet soup and like throw it on paper and whatever's there. That's the script. Friday the
Okay,
13th
see,
movie.
I have kind of a funny take on this, or what I think is a funny take. This was basically 2 movies, right? You have a whole different plot going on between the main character and her issues with her dad and the whole telekinesis thing that's going on, and the doctor's kind of the bad guy of that plot line. And basically they're like, in order to make this movie a Friday the 13th movie, we're just going to make a different movie and then just pan over to just Jason killing random people in the movie for no reason. And it's completely disconnected. And so you could do this with anything. You could be like, you could do it with Pulp Fiction. Just that movie, just keep the whole plot of Pulp Fiction going and just periodically cut over to Jason killing random people. And that's this movie. It's just two separate movies that they're just like, it's Friday the 13th. Let's cash in.
Well, I'll push back a little bit on that because at least in this movie, it's the neighbors of those people, so they're interacting, and all the random people they're killing are people that are coming to the party at that cabin. But that is like a quintessential Friday the 13th thing where you'll just smash cut to like 2 people that aren't in the movie that you have no idea who they are, and they just get mangled. It's
Right.
just like, oh, it's Jason fodder.
But my pushback to your pushback would be it didn't have to be like you could have separated these 2 movies and both would have worked as a movie. You had they came together at the end, but these were 2 totally separate plot lines, and they were intermingled because they intermingled, but they didn't have to be. You could have just
right. I think they didn't. I mean, it was goofy, but they did an okay job of at least mixing in the telekinesis with the reason that Jason is freed from the chains below the water. By the way, we're going to spoil this movie if you haven't seen it yet. It's an old movie, so go watch it. But so her telekinesis, she uses, she thinks she's bringing her dad back. Boom, out pops Jason from the lake, and then it begins. And they did a nice job of mixing in, is she just crazy and seeing these things? Obviously, we know it's a Friday the 13th movie, so we know that she actually unleashed the monster and he's out there killing people. But it was a nice little dynamic to start the movie where she's there, instead of being in a mental hospital, she's there with her doctor. He's like, no, you didn't free a killer. You didn't free anything. This is just your mind playing tricks on you, and you're seeing this figure. And it was nice to be able to play that for a little bit, because other than that, if you go back to previous movies, maybe someone did see Jason and they did see killer, but nobody believes him because they're like, there's no killer. And then eventually it'll come out. But this is a different kind of way to do it. So while it was goofy, it kind of worked.
I was I felt a little bit refreshed that they weren't just making the same movie for the 7th time, because the first 6 movies was just, and I've mentioned this in prior reviews, was like, okay, here we go. They're just doing the same movie again, the same thing over and over and over and over again. It just keeps being the same thing. At least they made an attempt to make this one a little bit different, where you add the dynamic that she can actually fight Jason back in an effective way, which I thought it was stupid, but it was like, it was almost enjoyable in like a funny way. There were so many things in this movie that just made me laugh because it was genuinely funny. Like just the way the objects moved as she was moving them with her mind was so goofy looking. And it was always so amusing, particularly when she moved the plant with the guy's head on it. And it's just like, whoop, and loops Jason and he falls over. And it's like, I laughed out loud. There were so many.
Even the matchbook, like the first sign or the first thing that we really saw, besides the whole childhood thing with the dock collapsing, but the first thing that she really moves when she's with the doctor is the book of matches, and it was still goofy. It's just it's all over the table that bursts into flames, and it was chaotic. It was a mess.
Yeah, but it was enjoyable in that kind of like bad horror, but in a funny way type of thing. Almost like, no, I don't want to compare it to that, but yeah, it's basically it was enjoyable. I enjoyed this more than I have enjoyed some of the ones in the past.
It was fun.
You can't leave us on suspense. You don't want to compare it to what?
It was enjoyable in a goofy way, and I was going to compare it to Evil Dead, the Army of Darkness, the third one. So it was enjoyable in that way. Now I like the Evil Dead one much better.
Yeah, Evil Dead was very, very obviously trying to be extremely goofy.
Right, and this one wasn't. So
no, I don't think they really were.
That's part of the reason that I didn't want to make the comparison. But like I felt the same watching it.
But we made you do it anyways, didn't we?
Well, you can't say it and then not say it. Like you can't be like, blah blah blah.
So I said it.
Yeah,
you did.
I love how while they're intermingling the two stories, it's like the girl meeting the guy from the cabin, the main girl. My favorite thing is like she keeps going over to the cabin and something happens and she just runs out crying.
Yeah.
It just continues to happen. And you're just like,
And this guy's still all in.
yeah.
Like the conversation they had by the pond was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Where she's like, I'm supposed to be at a mental hospital. I'm here with my doctor. I'm not okay. I am, she's basically saying like, I am batshit crazy. And he's like, I like that. Let's kiss. It's like, dude, like at this point, you need to go in and be like, is it cool that I'm hanging out with this girl? Like, is she like, you don't immediately take advantage of her, you nut job. But I think, yeah. So I got the same idea that with the kills in this movie that they were being censored by the studio, and that was disappointing. But I did enjoy, I think it was the fourth kill in the movie, when the girl is in the sleeping bag and he just doesn't even bother taking her out of the sleeping bag. He just picks up and bashes her against a tree. I thought that was a great kill.
It was the real one was that one was too silly and it didn't work because he grabbed her by the head end and then he bashed her feet against the tree. And then she falls and she's like, yeah. So, but in the cut scene, he bashed her against the tree, I think 7 times. And it was very bloody.
Yeah, it's one of the most iconic kills in the Friday the 13th franchise. And it was one of the, so the other thing we have to talk about is Kane Hodder. This is his first appearance as Jason. But Kane Hodder, this was a difficult kill for him to do because the mannequin within the sleeping bag was 95 pounds. And he just had to keep swinging it and he couldn't really make it look right. And he had to keep doing it and doing it and doing it. So
they should have made the mannequin lighter.
I think they were trying to keep it like for physics of so that it didn't look overly silly, you know?
Even in the censored version, it still looked pretty good.
Yeah.
Like I understand the optics of you got the wrong side, bro. But I thought it still looked okay. And now I don't believe I had seen this movie before yesterday. I may have seen bits and pieces, but that was probably my favorite throughout the movie where I was like, oh, that was kind of cool. It was just like, all right, whatever. She's in a sleeping bag.
Again, it's tough to talk about them because they're all cut, but you can go see them on YouTube. The one where he crushes the guy's head outside the van, and he just in the cut scene, he just squishes it into the size of like a shrunken head, and it just like blood's pouring out of it. It was a pretty cool kill.
Yeah.
Okay.
The video game did a good job of like sort of bringing some of these kills back from this movie in particular that got censored, and that's one of them. The head crush in the video game was really well done.
The censor thing is so weird because like I've seen so many movies in the 80s that were so much more brutal than this one. And this one was just like they, for whatever reason, decided they were going to pick on this movie. And I know it was because they wanted that R rating. And I know a lot of the movies that I'm referring to were X rated at the time. But yeah, it just seems like they were particularly mean to this movie.
Well, this was a time frame. Like in this point in time, the ratings board was really cracking down on all horror movies. So if you go back to rated R horror movies from like 87 to 90, I think, or so, they look a lot more watered down because the ratings board were just absolute dicks at the point in time.
That was,
this is
Nancy Reagan.
Yeah, this is one of the several reasons that Dave has seen every X-rated movie.
Yes, exactly.
Mm-hmm. But before we move on from that, the kill that you were just talking about where he crushed him, squished his head down, the next 2 kills are the most important kills in the movie, and it has nothing to do with the movie. It's because the first one, the woman, she's stabbed through the eye with like a party horn.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Her name was Kate.
Yes.
Next kill, stabbed in the stomach with a knife.
Dave?
Victim, David. Yep.
Nice. We did it.
We finally got there.
Did it.
Took how many horror movies before we got a Kate and Dave kill?
Good stuff.
We're very happy about it. Also, that kill, the party horn one, what a dumb scene. They're in the van having sex, and Jason's like rustling around outside, and she's like, "Is there something out there?" And they're like, "Oh, it's probably whatever the friend's name that didn't show up yet."
Nice.
Like, "Oh, it's Mike." Mike was it? He's like, "Oh, it's probably just Mike." It's like, "I'm gonna go find him." It's like, no, she's she's ready to go, bro. What are we doing here? Why are you going to play hide and go seek with your buddy?
That wasn't even the weirdest part. The weirdest part was she was like, let's surprise them. And they just push the doors open. They're both naked. Like, what are you doing?
That's one way to surprise Mike.
Yeah. So dumb. I think that the dialogue, I think one thing I want them to do with the dialogue, I know the people playing the parts are 40 years old, but the dialogue is always like, feels like it's written by like a 40-year-old in these horror movies and it's supposed to be teenagers. Like, this is not what anyone would do. Never mind teenagers or, young adults. What are we doing here? Let's make this a little better written. I know they had 14 minutes to write it, but
no, but this is also just 1980s dialogue across the board for horror movies. Maybe all movies in the 1980s. That's just how they talked. It was weird.
But I don't think it's how kids talked. I think that's how they think kids talked.
I mean, in movies, that's how they talked. Yeah.
Right. So it's not good. They make poor decisions that don't make any sense. Like whatever that van scene is, just so dumb. So another kill I want to talk about is the beheading, because I don't know what version of this movie you guys watched, but I actually got a pretty good HD version of this. As I was watching, I'm like, this is pretty good for a Friday the 13th from the 80s. I watched it on Pluto, believe it or not.
That's where I watched it.
And I was like shocked. And the one thing that the HD did no favors for in this movie was the decapitated head of one of the kills.
Mm-hmm.
It looked terrible. It looked so bad.
There's a lot of movies where it's like, you should not have put this in HD.
Yeah, you should not. You should have at least this scene. Like, we're just going to keep this the way it is, or we're going to throw some weird filter over it. But
it sucks for the directors after the fact too, because they're like, oh, we can get away with this because we know how it's going to look on screen. And then fast forward 40 years, and they're like, oh, what the fuck?
The other thing I found really funny about this is when you see the girl in her room and the cat comes in and startles her. It's like the false jump scare.
Mm-hmm.
And then she sees the head and Jason comes in.
Mm-hmm.
He grabs her and they're foreshadowing the window the whole time, right behind her. But if you watch, he takes her and throws her the other way through a different window. You're like, oh, why did you just push her through the window she was right in front of? I was like flabbergasted by that for some reason. It just really threw me off. I'm like, why is that the way that this went?
Yeah,
could have just went that way.
They might fall against it and crack the window, but if you grab them and throw them, they're going through that window.
Well, I know this movie doesn't like to show up, but Jason's supposed to be really strong, so you would think that he would be able to just power her through, which is another thing I want to talk about in a little bit. But I do want to get back to the interesting dynamic of this movie and the next few is they're not good. First of all, I mean, not that a lot of the Friday the 13th are like technically good, but the movies themselves start to go down. But the interesting thing is Kane Hodder is Jason now, and his version of Jason is essentially the most renowned version of Jason.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a real interesting juxtaposition that the movies aren't great, but Jason, because he does look even more menacing here than he's.
I was about to say, like, I think his look in this movie was probably the best yet.
Yeah.
They really nailed the he's been underwater for 10 years look. Like that was like he looked like a bloated corpse that climbed out of a river. It looked right, which is huge. Like props to the makeup in that department.
Yeah. And just his movements, the way he walks, he looks strong. He looks menacing. Just it's a whole different aesthetic than we've had for Jason in the past.
I don't know if you liked when they took his mask off at the end.
No, but I think that's a problem in a lot of Jason movies. They feel they need to take the mask off.
Mm-hmm.
And they just continue to do that movie after movie. And you're just like, it doesn't need to happen. And if it did happen, it should be for a reason. It's just that they take it off to take it off.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't depower him or anything like that. They just
wanted the shock of seeing that hideous face.
Right.
Towards the end.
But we've done it. But we've done it so many times already. And we're going to keep doing it throughout these movies. And you're just like, it's unnecessary. So I do think that's important. I do have a fun Kane Hodder story on the set of this, if you guys want to hear it.
Sure.
So one night after filming, he was heading back to his trailer, which was about a quarter mile down the road from where they were filming the movie. And he just started walking down the road in his Jason costume. So as he's walking down the road, a local stops him. And he's like, "Are you filming? Are you one of the people filming that movie down there?"
You hope so.
And he decided just to stay in character. And he charged at the guy, and the guy like fell back and like basically shit his pants and ran off. And the next day on set, the director came over to Kane Hodder and was like, "The sheriff called us about an incident last night, and he's probably going to come down and talk to you today." But the sheriff never showed up. So
that's actually great.
That is fantastic.
Yeah,
sees the opportunity. Hey, you can't blame him. You know, he's staying in character.
Yep.
Man's an actor.
Apparently, he's a method actor.
That's right. That's the word I was looking for. Method acting.
He was a stuntman before this. Did all of his own stunts in this movie, and one stunt almost messed him up pretty bad.
Was it the fire at the end?
It was not the fire at the end. It was the staircase.
Oh.
When he falls through the staircase. So they dummied a bunch of the stairs, but the rest of the stairs were still regular stairs. And if you watch right as he's falling through the hole, his head almost clips one of the rail stairs.
Ooh.
It's real close. He just missed it, but
lucky.
Would have ended up being real bad.
Also, it's like, but that's what they have stunt doubles for. And you were the one who was like, "Oh, I'm going to do my own stunts." So,
well, he was a stuntman. Like he got hired because of working on another movie. The director saw him eat real worms. So he was like, "That's the guy I want."
Oh, nice. I didn't know that. I didn't know he was a stuntman.
Yeah.
You know what? If you're casting for a role that has no lines anyways, like why wouldn't you just hire a stuntman?
Yeah,
I mean, hire a guy who's already a stuntman, then you don't have to hire two guys.
And you probably get him at a discount.
Yep. Most of the Jasons, I believe, were stuntmen. I think even like Michael Myers is usually played by a stuntman for the most part.
It's absolutely stupid not to. Like, you're not going to hire a great actor.
Yeah.
Not saying he didn't do a good job, but you're not going to hire Al Pacino to do a role like this and not talk the entire movie. I do wish he would just make that noise every once in a while, though.
Every kill is just like, hoo-ah.
Hoo-ah, ha, 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 ma, 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 ma.
When he comes out of the pond, he goes, "Hey, I just woke up." It's an inside joke no one's going to get, but we like that.
Throw back to the worst Al Pacino reference ever made.
Just ever. Also, it'd be funny to watch a 5'2" Jason Voorhees running around. Because that's about how tall Al Pacino is.
A really angry version of Jason Voorhees.
He's trying to lift someone up. He's like, "Hey, help me out."
I'm 90 and I just had a kid.
You're out of order.
All right. Well, now that we've dunked on Al Pacino, let's get into the end of this movie, because I was
say hello to my little Jason. That'll be the last one. Okay.
I have some thoughts on the end of this movie.
Oh, do you?
I do. Like, leading up, I'm going to let you rant on the end, but I just want to get to the leading up to that point where we have our final chase scene. Jason is supposed to be this really strong guy, and going back to that staircase scene, all she does is hit him with like a swinging light that doesn't even break, and that's what takes him off his feet to fall down the stairs. Like, and the light doesn't even break. So stupid.
Right.
But then when he is down in the basement, she starts spraying gas on him. And he's like, "Oh!" It's like, it's gasoline. Just walk. Just keep walking. And we see him do it later. He's getting shot. And he's just walking forward while he's getting shot, but the gasoline's spraying him. He's like, "Oh, no, I can't move."
It took that guy an awful long time to pull that gun and use it, too. Like, he had been chasing the two of them for a full 7 minutes. We had them cornered in the living room at one point. He had them backed into a corner. He had chased him up the stairway into the bedroom, and then he finally takes the gun out and starts shooting him. It's like, dude, where were you 10 minutes ago?
Yeah, what are you doing?
We know it's not going to work, but you didn't know it wasn't going to work.
Right. Yeah, but it's just like that made me laugh pretty good when just these little things are what's stopping him, and then he's just walking through bullets later. It's like, okay, we have no reference for what actually is happening with what Jason can do. Like, I would walk through if you were just pouring gasoline on me, I could keep walking forward. It's not gonna stop me in my tracks and push me backwards. It wasn't a freaking tidal wave. So
Actually, so I saw this little off topic. I saw this video once. It was surveillance footage of an attempted robbery at a gas station, and a car pulls up to a guy pumping gas, and two guys jump out of the car, and they run up to go rob the guy, and he just starts spraying them with the gas nozzle, and they're like slipping and falling and running back to their car. Granted, they're not Jason Voorhees, but like I was like, that is brilliant. What a great way to defend yourself against somebody trying to rob you at a gas station.
well,
Yeah, I've seen that video too, and it was mainly just like I feel like the criminal's reaction on that was just like, I don't want to be sprayed with gasoline.
Right? Yeah, it sounds very unpleasant.
It does.
It's dangerous.
yeah,
I wouldn't
Jason
recommend
Voorhees was just in the bottom of a lake for 10 years. So I think
There was a one of the top fashion models, and he pulled over at a gas station, and him and all his friends had a gas fight, and it led to all of his friends dying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Including Alexander Skarsgård.
Yeah.
Yep. Rest in peace.
Rest in peace.
They did make him a statue though.
You never know what movie we're going to spoil on these spoilers. Jeez,
How we got to Zoolander on this review, nobody knows, but we got there. All right, Dave, hit us with the grand finale. Tell us about the ending scene of this movie.
So, Rob, earlier you alluded to this possibly being the worst of the Friday the 13th franchises. I don't agree. I don't think it's the worst. I know you didn't say that, but I don't agree with that claim. If it is a claim, what I will say is this is unquestionably the dumbest ending to all of them. This is what you came up with. This is what you came up with. I know you were rushed. You only had 5 months to write the movie, but this is the dumbest ending, maybe to any horror movie ever. But that's too bold of a claim for me to make right now. I have to think about it. We go back to the beginning of the movie, right? And the beginning of the movie is when the main character, she's a little girl, and she's in a fight with her parents or her father specifically, and she accidentally uses her telekinesis power that she didn't know she had, and the father drowns because of it in that lake. Now, fast forward, we're at the end of this movie, and Jason has her 10 years later cornered on the dock, and she again conjures her telekinetic ability to raise the body of her father out of the water at the end of the dock, and he grabs Jason and pulls him into the water. If you haven't seen this movie and you think I'm kidding, I am not. This is the dumbest imaginable ending to this movie, because you could probably imagine different ways that you could end this movie, and this is the dumbest thing you could possibly imagine to end this movie. It's dumb for so many reasons. It's dumb because it's dumb. It's also dumb because, Rob, you mentioned this, and I'm sorry to rain on your parade if I'm going to make this point for you, but he came out of the water as if he had just went in for a quick dip, and he looked
just fell in, like he had just fallen in.
Not as if he had been dead under that water for 10 years. The other thing is just, why would his body even still be there? They wouldn't have got it. It's a small lake. Like, they wouldn't have got his body out of the lake and buried him. They would have just like, oh, he's dead. Fuck, I guess we'll leave him there.
Have we addressed the possibility and the probability that she did not conjure the should be bloated corpse that should not be there of her father, and perhaps she conjured the spirit of her father?
It wasn't a spirit. It
wasn't her father.
It was.
No, I mean, it wasn't her father in his present state.
Not in his present state, but it was his state when he died. He jumped out of the water and bear hugged Jason and pulled him in. And then the cut scene was, they cut this. I don't know if they cut it because they had to, or if they just cut it because this is actually too fucking stupid. But they had him before he pulled Jason down. It was either before he pulled Jason into the water with him, or he came right back up and then smiled at his daughter, and they nodded at each other. And
That's bad. That's bad.
really stupid.
They should have kept it. I would have been so happy if they kept it.
At that point, just might as well go all in, right?
You got it, right?
Does
Oh,
it
man.
actually make it less stupid? I don't know.
No, but it leans into it.
Mhm.
It leans into the stupidity.
It
It's
was so stupid.
it's really bad. It's super bad. It's like really bad, and then they don't the follow up afterwards, like the next morning stuff that they like to do in these movies, where they tease another movie, is just as bad because it's just like her on a stretcher. They put him in an ambulance, like we got him. Roll credits, and you're just like,
Yeah, and that's because they cut the actual final scene also. Again, for I don't know why. It's like this is just back to like they it seems like they were really picky with this movie, what they made them cut. Because the last scene was just a random dude in a fishing boat, and like much like the first Friday the 13th, Jason jumps up out of the water, grabs the guy out of the fishing boat, and pulls him in. So and they cut that. Like, dude, why?
yeah, why would you cut that? I think that it's probably not the worst Friday the 13th overall, but it's obviously the most edited. That's a fact that it's the most edited of them. And that just sort of makes it DOA
Mhm.
because it's a Friday the 13th movie.
You got to have the kills.
You got to have the kills. And you do get one of the most iconic kills with the sleeping bag kill in this movie,
Mhm.
but they had so many other good things that they did or could have done, and everything. You can have some generic kills in a horror movie, like especially a slasher. Not every series needs to be Final Destination. Like Final Destination is about the kills and like the complexity and the craziness of them. A slasher, sometimes somebody can just get slashed, right? It's fine, like because that's what the movie is, and then you just have like 2 or 3. But the fact that we only get one really in this, even that's cut down, like everything's cut down, that hurts this movie incredibly. It's already not going to be a good plot. It's a Friday the 13th movie. You're
Mhm.
taking away what makes it enjoyable. That's why I think some would argue this is the worst Friday the 13th overall. I don't like the telekinetic stuff either. I feel like we've established the rules in this world where Jason lives. And now 7 movies in, you're introducing something completely crazy. Doesn't work for me at all, and we don't follow up with it ever.
I've done
So-
some digging on the ending real quick, and apparently there's like a Blu-ray cut where the father is actually much more like zombified at the end, where he kind of resembles Jason in the beginning of the movie when he pops out of the water. And for whatever reason, they went with the garbage that they went with. But I think they wanted to go. There was 3 different possibilities here at the end. One was it was corpse of father that she telekinesised out of the water, if that's a word. If not, we're going to use it forever because it's great. So she telekinesised her father out of the water, and
Telekineted.
and I think if you have a zombified version, then you have, okay, for whatever reason they left his corpse in the water, and that's what came out, and she just kind of like necromanced her father's dead body to save her one last time. Option 2 is it was the spirit of her father that came to help her out. By the way, both these still remarkably stupid. And then option 3 would be it was another one of her like dreams or like delusions where she thinks she's seeing this or something. You have the whole possibility of this whole being like a, she's dealing with mental issues and this is all just delusions.
But it's not because the boyfriend confirms that he saw Jason as well.
Right. But I'm just saying with the ending. Well, I guess you could have the possibility of the whole movie. I mean, but it's not that deep. Come on now.
No, I don't think it is, and I don't think you can justify that she imagined her father coming out and solving the problem, because then the problem is not solved. So what happened? Right. If it's just a delusion. What would have been great, which I just thought.
Telekinesed the chains back on Jason in the water. But I think the studio went with not such a morbid one for the same reasons that they cut a lot of the kills here probably. And they're like, all right, it's the spirit of her dad saving her. Either way, it was the wrong decision. Any one of those was the wrong decision. There were a lot of bad decisions made when making this movie. And the ending is probably the worst decision of this entire movie.
You know what I would have liked, actually? I actually think I would have liked this and it's close to one of the versions you just talked about, is if she just telekinesis her father's dead, bloated corpse out and just bludgeoned Jason with him. Dead body.
Just like the sleeping bag kill. Just
Yeah.
telekinesis slamming the. Yeah. There's just body parts falling off and stuff. But he still gives a smile and a wink.
No. I think that if they just took the dead body and just beat him to death with the dead corpse of her father, I think I actually might have liked that. Like, actually would have been a positive for me.
Would have been fantastic.
It would have been so absurd that I think I would have liked it.
And the whole time she's crying, she's like, I can't stop it. I meant to grab a rock, but I grabbed Dad.
That would actually be so dark and twisted and hilarious that I think that
would have been great.
I wouldn't have been able to get through our episode tonight because I would have just been laughing from that still because I watched it before we started recording tonight. So, shall we get in some scores on this one, gentlemen? I'll start. I'm going to give it a 2 flat. I think it's fine. I think some of it's not their fault. It's the ratings board stuff, but I mean, the movie is the movie at this point, and it's just too bland overall. Like it's a bland Friday the 13th. It's fine. You can put it on, have some fun watching it with friends because it's Friday the 13th. It doesn't have any like overly cheesy stuff like some of the other movies we've already watched in the series has. So I like that, but I want my kills in these movies, man. That's what I watch them for. So it's I'll give it a 2.2. I'll give it another 0.2 because of the sleeping bag kill. How about that?
Yeah.
2.2.
I'm right there with you. I had it at a 2.2, and then you stole my score after you amended yours, but it wasn't great. But I'll give it 2.2 glowing dad corpses. Please actually do that one.
That'll be an easy graphic. I'll look into that. I get this at a 3.4. I actually had a fun time watching it. I don't think it was terrible. It wasn't one of the ones where I was like watching the clock being like, why the fuck won't this end? I was actually having a good time watching it because it was absurd. The telekinesis thing was dumb, but it made the end scene watchable, right? Where you don't know what's going to happen. You're like, is she actually going to get out of this? You know, it made it at least interesting. Like, I don't know,
almost like a Stranger Things 11 type thing where it's like, all right, she could actually fight this thing, right?
Yeah, it actually is a fight at the end, which is kind of cool. And I don't actually, contrary to what I said in the beginning, I'm not going to take points off for the kills because they shot them. They intended on it to be one way, and you can actually go on YouTube and watch the kills, and they were pretty cool. So I'm giving credit to what they filmed and what they intended. I'm not going to knock points off because the MPAA is stupid. So yeah. I'm giving it a 3.4 or 5, whatever I said.
Glad you kept your score intact there within the 30 seconds that you had to say it again. I'm sad, gentlemen, because this is the only Friday the 13th that is in the year 2025, which means we're left hanging before we get to Friday the 13th Part 8, which is when he goes to Manhattan.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to talk about that one. And he doesn't actually go to Manhattan. So
you're going to have to wait.
But we'll have to wait till 2026 to talk about that one. Let us know what you thought about Friday the 13th Part 7. Leave it in the comments. Let us know your score. And until next time, I've been Rob. That's Dave and Jesse. We'll catch you later. Peace.